Welcome to Sib Spot. Today's Reddit stories are from PettyRevenge. Story 1 is by Xbox Gamer 2122. Once at a hotel, I put the Do Not Disturb sign on my door before going to bed. At 7 a.m. there was a loud knocking from the maid wanting to clean my room. I told her it was too early, but she told me I was checking out that day and the hotel was completely booked for the next 2 nights due to some sort of local event. I told her I wasn't ready to check out and intended to sleep for another couple hours. The sign on the back of the door, and I pointed it out to her, said checkout time 11 a.m. More knocking around 8 a.m. waking me up. Same maid, telling me to hurry up since she needed to clean the room. I told her, with a degree of annoyance, that I was not checking out for another couple of hours. The next time she knocked, a few minutes later, I didn't answer. Loud banging. And then she unlocked the door, but the chain on the inside kept the door from opening, and it let her know the room was still occupied. I immediately called the front desk and was told that checkout for the day had been changed to 9 a.m., and that I had been informed of that when I checked in. That was not true, and I said so. Their reply is that if I was not out by 9 a.m., I would be billed for an extra night. I called their bluff, saying that if that was the case, I'd simply stay the extra night since they were charging me for it. We came to an agreement that they would give me an extra hour and I would check out by 10 a.m. I would have been out earlier, but the maid started banging on the door at 9 a.m. telling me to get out. She actually told me to get out. She was waiting at my door when I walked out at exactly 10 a.m. and she immediately rushed inside. I wheeled her cart outside my door to the elevator, rode down to the parking garage, and pushed the cart about 10 feet away from the elevator against the wall. Then I went up and checked out. And yes, I know the maid was doing her job, but 7 a.m. is very early, and after telling her I wasn't ready, she came back twice and woke me up. She was very rude when she could have asked me nicely or explained that earlier checkout time for the day. I don't know if I agree with you doing that or not. She was rude. She was rude and she did bother you while sleeping. So you gotta get back at her somehow. But taking her cart is just gonna inconvenience her and everybody else that she's gotta deal with that morning. You should have called the desk immediately, and she should definitely be reprimanded for knocking on the door multiple times. I'm sure they were swamped with how much they had to do that day to prepare for this big booked event that they've got going on, though. They're already behind. There's a reason that she's rushing. She shouldn't have been knocking on your door at 7 a.m. She shouldn't have knocked at 8. She shouldn't have knocked 20 minutes later telling you to get out of your room. You paid for the room and checkout time was 9 a.m. If they didn't tell you about it, though, that's on them. I would definitely be leaving a review for this place that said what you experienced. And it's possible that they just forgot to tell you. Is that forgivable? Yes. But I've never heard of a hotel making everybody check out earlier than normal. It's always been 11 a.m. for me. Our next story today is by Chapstick Lesbian. Locked my car to annoy teenagers who would not move from an open parking spot. This is the pettiest of petty revenge I've been a part of for some time, and I still think it's funny. A couple months ago, I went to grab some pizza from a chain pizza place. I ordered ahead, which is good because they were insanely busy. The entire parking lot was full except for one spot by the entrance, but for some reason, a few teenagers were sitting in the parking spot. Not in a car, but just sitting there, taking up space. I figured they would move as I pulled up, but they didn't. I also figured they would move if I started to pull in, but they didn't. So I pulled in as slowly as possible so as to not hit them but still get my car in the spot. As I got out, they gave me dirty looks but still stayed sitting right in front of my car. Side note, my car has a very shrill and loud horn, and it is particularly ear-piercing if you're right in front of my car. It is incredibly annoying. Annoyed, I came up with a plan for revenge before I even got out of the car. As I went inside, I did what any responsible car owner would do and locked my car so the horn would go off. Twice. The kids weren't sitting there when I got back. Edit, changed accept to accept. Good for you, OP. Also, there were 2 patios at this pizza place, so plenty of spaces to sit aside from the parking spot. Forgot to mention this initially. A couple teenagers that just decided they were going to sit in a parking spot. Were they sitting on like the curb or something with their feet in the parking spot? It doesn't make sense that people would actually sit where cars park. That seems so strange to me. I've never seen somebody do that before. I'd be too worried about getting dust and dirt and oil all over my pants. Our next story is by Generally So-So. TSO. TSO. They must be a fan of General So's chicken. Treated unfairly by teacher all semester, but I gave him some payback. This story goes back over 30 years ago when I, now 50 male, was a senior in high school. Civics was a required course necessary for graduation. My older sister had taken civics 4 years earlier with the same teacher, Mr. K. My first day in class, Mr. K takes attendance and recognizes my last name and asks if I'm related to my sister. Upon acknowledging that we were in fact related, Mr. K shakes his head in his West African accent, says, "Bad citizen, I will have to watch you." Bad citizen was his catchphrase for anyone who did something that he didn't like in his classroom. So I thought he was just kidding me, but I soon learned that he was actually serious. I don't know what kind of trail of destruction that my older sister had left in her wake, but I wasn't a troublemaker. I get into class on day 2 of civics, and 10 minutes into class I start getting chastised by Mr. K for talking during class. What was particularly odd, beyond the fact that I hadn't even spoken a word, was that no one was talking. I tried to explain that I hadn't said anything, but it didn't matter. Not 5 minutes later, I was getting sent to the office with a suspension referral for talking in class without speaking. Apparently, Mr. K's credibility was already somewhat tarnished with the school administrators, and I wasn't suspended from school. Nonetheless, this is how much of the semester went. I would get sent to the office for Mr. K's paranoid delusions. He would mark my tests with grades of C or D, even though I had answered every question correctly. Gave me a final grade of C, even though I had earned an A. Mr. K always stayed after school each day until exactly 5 p.m. in his classroom with the door closed. No one knew what he did in there, as he had never had a lesson plan that went beyond having his students read the textbook out loud to the rest of the class. So on the last day of school, everyone left right away for the summer. Everyone, that is, except for Mr. K and myself. Mr. K was secluded in his classroom as he always was after school was done. I tiptoed silently up to his door, standing with my feet wider at the door to prevent the shadow of my feet being seen under the door. I then proceeded to empty an entire tube of glue, the fast-drying kind, into the seam between his door and the door frame. Well, Mr. K and the glue had little over 2 hours for the glue to set. Plenty of time for the glue to harden. I wasn't around for it, but I heard that the fire department had to come to free him from his classroom. Mr. K could only guess who the bad citizen was that glued him in his room. Good petty revenge, but if it's true, you ended up bothering the fire department instead of your teacher. He is fine sitting in his classroom, so you didn't really get revenge on him. But I'm sure he knows who did it. This story actually reminded me of a teacher that I had in college. He had a strong South African accent as well. And we had a big debate with him one day because he told us that if you use the word comprised, that it already is implied that you have the word of following it. So instead of saying this is comprised of many things, you were supposed to, according to him, and he was an English teacher, by the way, you were supposed to say, this is comprised many things. He insisted that he was correct. And I still to this day, when I get to that phrase, I'm like, was he right? I look it up online and I'm like, no, it's usually followed by of. It's comprised of these things. But it also makes me wonder if grammatically there's situations where you're just supposed to use the word comprised without the word of following it. And I can't honestly think of a situation where that would be the case. If any of you out there are super brainy with the English language, please let me know where there might be a situation where the word comprised doesn't get followed by of. Our stories have come to a close. Until we meet again, have a splendid day.